passed away, as if they had all failed. But Allah Almighty gives us a summary of the believers in Surah Al-Mu'minun, the chapter which was named after believers. And in the first verse of that chapter, Allah Almighty Himself says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, that the believers have become successful. And when you look at the time that this verse of the Holy Quran was revealed, all commentators of the Holy Quran accept that this surah was revealed towards the last year when the Muslims were in Makkah before they migrated to Medina. This was after 13 years of all the struggles and the persecution, and there was only a few people that had accepted Islam, as if there was failure. There was a lot of tabligh going on, preaching, and the Holy Prophet ﷺ was being persecuted himself. He lost his companions, he lost his wife, he lost his uncle, and all other relatives that were related to other companions were being killed and persecuted. And Allah Almighty says about that group of people after 13 years that the believers have become successful. And the word that was used there is the same word that is used for farmers, for Allah in Arabic. That is someone who gets up and hopes that the rainy season is about to start. Hopefully there will be rain. There's a barren piece of land. He goes and cleans it, he clears that piece of land, takes a seed and puts it in that soil and hopes that something will come out of it. Something that's completely out of his or her hand. That is the terminology that's used there by Allah Almighty. After all those years of struggle that the Muslims had, their hope was with Allah, that something was going to happen, even not through them, but through other people that was to come after them. When you look at the history of the creation of Allah Almighty as well, huge creation, the whole universe. And out of all those, He chose human beings. Ashraful Makhluqat, the best of His creation, is mankind. Amongst the whole of mankind, He chose Adam, as His viceroy, as His Khalifa, as His prophet. Of all the prophets, He chose Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam as the Khatamun Nabiyyin, the seal of the prophets, the master of the prophets. So this always shows that there's always a huge group, but then there's always a small, specific, special group in that. And the mission of the Prophet ﷺ is for all of us here who claim to be part of that group, to be in that small, specific group that He has come to really create. Because even amongst the companions of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, we talk about the 10,000 saints. We talk about the 1.6 billion Muslims. Allah Almighty says, of all those people in Surah Tawbah, let there be a small group of you who call towards good and forbid evil. So consistently there's always this call towards, there's a huge group, but then there's a specific group that I want. And we all claim to be part of that group, at least within the Muslim Ummah, to say we have accepted this man as a fulfillment of that prophecy. It's a huge task, and it's a huge responsibility. For those of you who have been fortunate enough to read the books of the Prophet ﷺ, it gives you sleepless nights to be in this group, to remain in this group, because there's such a thin line. Only if we think about it. What's that mission of the Prophet ﷺ? What does it have to do with me? There is no mediocre Ahmadi. There is no, on and off Ahmadi. As far as the Prophet ﷺ is concerned, it's very specific as to who is in that circle and who is not. When there's interviews of Huzur, and journalists ask him, how many Ahmadis are there in the world? Almost every single time, if you listen to his interviews, Huzur would say, there's millions and millions of Ahmadis, but he'll always give a number of the active, participating. And that's what he focuses on, because it's about the quality. And the generations in my family that have accepted Ahmadiyya, my great-grandfather was a Sahabi. My father was the Sadr of this Jamaat for 29 years. I was secretary this for 30 years. Those are the things that are absolutely useless if we do not find ourselves in that circle. These are the words of the Prophet ﷺ, and I'll read out that quote for you later. But again, the purpose of this presentation is to really take us back when every single one of us, individually, just assess ourselves and just position ourselves. Are we in or outside of that special group that the promised Messiah really came to accept, to create? That righteous group of individuals who would come together and make that Jamaat. Again, the Holy Prophet ﷺ said the solution to the problems that Islam will face in the latter days is that there will be a Jamaat who would be like me and my companions. And those were, again, specific group of companions. But we all know, if you came together, these motivational speakers, when they go to a soccer team or a football team and they're talking to the players, or they go to a college or a university, they're talking to all these group of people that want to graduate with PhDs or want to make it in the college team. Almost always, they say, well, we all know that all of you are probably motivated right now to become professionals or to graduate with the straight A's or whatever you want. But we are almost certain that the percentage of people that will succeed in this whole group is very, very small. It's a very small percentage. At this point, we don't know who will make it and who will not. But history has shown us that our nature is such that only a few people will be ready to take that extra mile to get them for the tahajjud prayers, to pray for the person they don't like. These are the extras that push us to be part of that small and specific group. As the Holy Quran keeps us saying, is the one who knows and the one who doesn't know, can they be equal? The one who's blind and the one who's not blind, can they be equal? All these illustrations are there in the Holy Quran to make it clear for us that because you've merely signed a piece of paper that's called a bad form, or because your father is this and that, or your mother is this and that, means absolutely nothing. And that's the reality check that we all of us need to do. That's the reality check we all need. And it's every day of our lives. There is no day that you're certain of whether you're in or out. It makes it a marathon, it makes it a race that we all do together in order to succeed and in order for us to fulfill those wishes and desires and prayers of the Prophet ﷺ. Are we in that small group or not? And there is no one way of making that judgment to say there's 5 questions, you answer them. Everyone has their own questions to answer. Everyone has their own challenges that they need to overcome. Everyone has their own habits that they need to get rid of. Everyone has their own good habits that they need to improve on. And it makes it a different exam, different test for every single one of us. And that test, the Prophet ﷺ gives us an example in his book, Our Teaching, when he explained all the reasons why Allah Almighty has sent him in detail. And then in the end, he gives a summary of all those things that are expected of the people that call themselves part of that group, members of that group, of the Jamaat. If you call yourself a true Muslim, I have a few questions for you. The Prophet ﷺ asks, and these aren't easy, because he says, having explained all these things, it says, I repeat once more, that you must not rest satisfied merely because in outward form you have taken bad at my hand. And again, this is even for those people that accepted the bad that they handed the Prophet ﷺ. It says the outward form means nothing. Because you have filled that form and signed it means absolutely nothing. These are the words of the Prophet ﷺ. Because you associate with this community, because you are active in this community, because you give a few dollars for Jannah, because your child comes to Tahir Academy, because you're an office bearer. These subtle things the Prophet ﷺ says, because you have signed this means absolutely nothing. God sees what lies inside your hearts. And this is a judgment that none of us can make. Only you know what Allah knows. And He will deal with you on the basis of what He sees there. Because only He can see what is inside. And He says, whosoever does not live with his wife and her relations with gentleness, goodness, and magnanimity, he is not of my community. That's how simple and straightforward it is. If that relationship with your wife is strained and you're just being some sort of an unjust person towards them, he says, forget it. There is no point coming around and showing that face. There is no point. Go and fix that, because otherwise you are not even part of my community. If you cannot fix your relationship with your spouse and with your children, your family, he says you're out of this group. Don't waste your time. Whosoever deprives his neighbor of the very least good in his power, he is not of my community. We talk about North Philly, the killings and the child abuses and the drugs. He says, whosoever deprives his neighbor of the very least in his power, whatever Allah Almighty has given you in power and strength and ability, if you deprive your neighbors of it, Prophet ﷺ says that you are not part of this community, that you're not qualified to be in my group, that Allah Almighty has sent me to create. Whosoever has no wish to forgive the faults of those who may have transgressed against them, even if someone is unjust against you. He says, whosoever has no wish to forgive the faults of those who may have transgressed against him and desires to nurse malice, is not of my community. Even if someone is unjust against you, even if someone is showing you that they dislike you, they disrespect you in public, if you don't have that desire in you to forgive that person and pray for them, Prophet ﷺ is saying, check out, this is not for you. You do not qualify. Every man or woman who is dishonest towards his or her spouse is not of my community. Whosoever in any way violates the pledge he took at my hand at the time of the bad is not of my community. And I just want to focus on 2 points. There are 10 conditions of bad, as we all know, but just 2 of those in relation to the reminders that was left for us when he inaugurated this masjid. The Prophet ﷺ said, if we do not fulfill these 10 conditions of bad, what are we even thinking? What hope do we even think we have? We can't fulfill these conditions. And the 3rd condition that we all ascribe to, we all sign to, or we all at least say we are part of, that he or she shall regularly offer the 5 daily prayers in accordance with the commandments of God and the Holy Prophet ﷺ, and shall try his or her best to be regular in offering the tahajjud prayers. If you don't remember, it's right here. The 5 daily prayers and the tahajjud prayers. The tahajjud is not just voluntary or you get up once a month. If you do not offer it, Prophet ﷺ in essence is saying you're out. And invoking durood, blessings on the Holy Prophet ﷺ, that he or she shall make it his or her daily routine to ask forgiveness for his or her sins, to remember the bounties of God, and to praise and glorify him. If you do not do these things, the most basic, salat, and for men, we all know it means the congregational salat. If you're not coming around and doing those congregational prayers, it says forget it. Condition number 8, and that's where I'll end, that he or she shall hold faith, the honor of faith, and the cause of Islam dearer to him or her than his or her own life, wealth, honor, children, and all other dear ones. We say we'll give preference to this world, to our faith over the world. That's just a summary of it. That's not what the Prophet ﷺ is saying. That's not what you signed up to. What you signed up to and what you still choose to be part of says that he or she shall hold faith, the honor of faith, and the cause of Islam dearer to him or her than his or her own life, his or her own wealth, his or her own honor, and his or her own children, and all other dear ones. Your own children, our own children, my own children. The cause of Islam and the honor of faith shall be dearer to me than that. And in the end, just to remind all of us that the place we find ourselves in this very city, it's a high need for people to hear this message. For us to go out there and make some sort of difference in getting that message out. Because the Prophet ﷺ says, if you know in your heart that Islam is the solution for the problems that the world is facing, why are you keeping it to yourself? Why not share it with others? And as he says, if I had the ability and I was able to go to these countries in the West, He said, I would go in the streets of London and knock at every single door every day to give them this message. That's what the Prophet ﷺ wrote. If I was able to, and I was in these countries, if I was in London, I would knock at every door every day, street by street, and I would give them this message of the solution to the problems the world is facing. And if you call ourselves to be true servants and people that have accepted Him, through whom Allah Almighty said, it is through your hand that I'll bring about the victory of Islam, then why are we sitting back? Why are we not sharing this message of love that we all say we accept? We all say is the solution to our domestic and our communal and our social problems and ills. Why keep it to ourselves? May Allah Almighty enable all of us to heed to these real reminders and give us the ability, the strength, and the righteousness to be able to represent the Prophet ﷺ as a true ambassador, inshallah. Alhamdulillah.
Jazakumullah wa samzira. Now we'll have a program from the Nasrat and from Tifo. We got the Nasrat over here. Request of General Secretary sir, if you can take the mic to them and help them out. First they will give their name and then part of the speech. First speaker we have, her name is Subha Qureshi.
On March 23, 1889, the promised Messiah, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad salam, accepted the hands of 40 faithful followers and initiated them into the community he founded, which he called the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. 130 years later, the same community has spread across the world in over 200 countries, with tens of millions of members. Today I will share with you the death of the promised Messiah, Islam's father, and how Allah gave him the strength to bear this huge loss. In the year 1876, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Islam was in Lahore when he had a dream. He understood from this dream that his father was about to pass away, so he rushed back to Qadian to be with him. Although he was ill, his illness did not seem to be very serious. Then the next day, the promised Messiah received the following Quranic verse in a revelation. We call to witness the heaven and that which appears by night. Chapter 86, verse 2. This revelation made him understand that his father was about to pass away and that the death would occur that day after sunset. Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad was greatly troubled by this revelation and worried how he would make a living without his father. That day after sunset, his father passed away in accordance with his revelation and immediately received another revelation of the following Quranic verse. Alaysa lahu biqafin abdu. Is not God sufficient for his servant? Chapter 39, verse 37. This revelation gave him great comfort and peace. Future incidents in his life showed that God was with him in every situation, proving that indeed God was sufficient for his humble servant. These words of revelation were carved into a stone and made into a ring which he wore all his life. Today many Ahmadis also wear rings with this Quranic verse as a symbol of their respect for the promised Messiah and as a constant reminder that God can get you through any hardship. Jazakallah for your attention.
Next is Sarah Khan.
The topic of my speech is
The miracles, signs, and prophecies of Hazrat promised Messiah, peace be upon him. The promised Messiah, peace be upon him, performed multiple miracles. Most of the miracles were prophecies that came true. One of the miracles had to do with the prophecy regarding to the death of Bandit Likram. This stated that his death was going to happen because of his comments against the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It said he would die on the day after Eid al-Adha within 6 years as of February 20th, 1893. On March 6, 1897, he was killed by an unknown assassin. Another miracle is the prophecy of the plague on February 6, 1898. He stated that through a vision, he saw the plague was going to spread to the Punjab. At this time, the plague was not even close to the Punjab, so nobody believed him. But in the next winter, plague spread to 2 cities of the Punjab. In 1877, a man named Ralia Ram sued the promised Messiah, peace be upon him, because he had placed a letter inside a parcel, which was against the law. The followers of the promised Messiah, peace be upon him, told him to lie and said that he did not put the letter inside of the parcel. However, he put his trust in Allah and told the truth, and he was acquitted for the charge by the blessing of Allah. The last miracle I'm going to talk about is when the promised Messiah made the prophecy of the First World War. He wrote a poem in volume 7 of Barahin-i-Ahmadiyya, which gives a description of a promised earthquake. Part of this poem states that even the mighty Tsar will find himself in a miserable condition. When that hour will approach, the prophecy did come true, and also the king of Tsar did have a miserable fate. Along with these few miracles, the promised Messiah, peace be upon him, had many more miracles and prophecies that also came true. Jazakallah.
Next is Dani Abdullah.
Respected aunties and uncles, Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dani Abdullah. In the Hadith, Sahih Muslim, it says that Masih will descend near a white minaret in the east of Damascus. We know that the promised Messiah alayhi salam was born in Qadian, which is directly east of Damascus. Many of us have also seen the picture of Minarat al-Masih in Qadian. Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah. निशान को देखकर इनकार कब तक जाएगा? अरे एक और झूठों पर क़यामत आने वाली है.
The last one is Sabika Ahmed.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Today I am going to talk about having patience. To me, patience means when something goes wrong, not showing anger. I am going to tell you a story about the promised Messiah alayhi salam. One day, the promised Messiah alayhi salam's son, who was little at that time, went in his room with some friends. He had a box of matches with him. While playing, he burned some important writings of the promised Messiah alayhi salam. When the promised Messiah alayhi salam came in the room to look for the papers, all he saw were ashes. But he did not get upset or show any anger. Instead, he smiled and said, "Maybe Lamia wants me to write better." The promised Messiah alayhi salam showed us a great example of having patience. Now I will try to be more patient when my baby brother messes up my papers too. And I hope that Lamia helps us all have more patience. Ameen. Jazakallah.
Now the next one is from the Tifo, Aramis, who will speak about the prophecy from the Bible about the Prophet Messiah Islam.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Respected President and attendees of this session, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. It is the way of Allah Almighty that His messengers come with clear signs, which are beyond human influence. Hazrat Masih Ma'al-Salam's case was not any different. Allah Almighty revealed the signs of the advent of the promised Messiah in the Bible, Quran, and in sayings of our Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I will discuss a few prophecies mentioned in the Bible by the Hazrat Isa Alayhi Salam. When Hazrat Isa was asked about the signs of the second advent of the Messiah, he states, and I quote, "For the lightning comes from the east and flashes to the west. So also will be the coming of the Son of Man," unquote. Matthew chapter 24, verse 27. Jesus was in Jerusalem when he mentioned this prophecy, and Qadian, India, the birthplace of the promised Messiah, salam, is due east of Jerusalem. In biblical terms, the east represents the light of God, His guidance, and His wisdom. And this is what Hazrat Ahmad brought to mankind. Hazrat Isa's prophecy has a striking resemblance of Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu prophecy regarding this advent of the promised Messiah from the east. And I quote Hazur saying from Sahih Muslim, quote, "Allah would send Christ, son of Mary, and he will descend at the white minaret in the eastern side of Damascus," unquote. But this is not the only prophecy of the Bible fulfilled in the person of Hazrat Masih salam. Further elaborating the heavenly signs of his second advent, the Bible states, and I quote from Matthew chapter 24, verse 29, King James Version, quote, "Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light." This claim of Jesus Christ regarding solar and lunar eclipse has also been supported by the narration of Master Prophet Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in the following words, quote, "For our Mahdi there are two signs which have never appeared before since the creation of the heavens and the earth. Namely, the moon will be eclipsed on the first night in Ramadan, i.e., on the first of the nights on which a lunar eclipse can occur, and the sun will be eclipsed on the middle day, i.e., on the middle one of the days on which a solar eclipse can occur." And these signs have not appeared since God created the heavens and the earth, unquote. Sunandarakatni. This magnificent prophecy was fulfilled when the lunar and solar eclipses were observed on March 21st and April 6th of 1894 in the Eastern Hemisphere, and again on March 11th and March 26th of 1895 in the Western Hemisphere. Miraculously at that time, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian was the only person to claim that these heavenly signs were being shown in his favor. Off note, the word Mahdi used in the above case of Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is another title of the promised Messiah. This is pointed out in another saying of his, La Mahdi illa Isa. There is no Mahdi except Isa. Now, I would like to draw your attention to a heavenly sign that appeared shortly prior to promised Messiah's birth. On November 17, 1833, approximately 2 years before the birth of Hazrat Masih, the greatest meteor shower in recorded history was seen, in which over 200,000 meteors were produced. Referring to this event in the days of Advent of the promised Messiah, the Holy Bible says, quote, "The stars will fall from the sky, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken," unquote. Matthew chapter 24, verse 29. Moreover, Jesus Christ told us in the Bible, and I quote, "I will give you a mouth and wisdom, and all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor resist," unquote. Luke 21:15. What a clear description of the method used by the promised Messiah salam, to propagate Islam. In his lifetime, he wrote 84 books and issued an open challenge to all his opponents to produce writings as good as his. His opponents avoided these challenges, momentary rewards unable to entice them. Furthermore, Hazrat Isa has prophesied about the promised Messiah's courageous character. Quote, "And then shall all of the tribes of earth mourn," unquote. Matthew 24:30. Here, Hazrat Isa presents clear proof that the promised Messiah will not agree with contemporary thought and will not support any one group, either religious or political. He, through his wisdom, will call on mankind to reform or be destroyed, which will cause much anguish among the nations. Again, the promised Messiah chastised all religions, showing in each case where they had abandoned the truth and become corrupted. Although several signs of the advent of promised Messiah have been described in the Bible, time does not allow me to further speak on this topic. Hence, I will stop here. I would like to finish the speech of Hazrat Masih Maud's quote regarding the signs. Saf dil ko kasorte ijaz ki hajat nahin. A pure heart does not require many signs to recognize the truth. Ek nishan kafi hai. For a God-fearing heart, one sign is enough. Jazakallah.
Now I request Zahir Chaudhry Sahab come and start our program Jabati, our special program every year. And he's going to explain